Welcome to Video 4 in this NBA Workbook series. We'll be dealing with functions and how we can use them to generate fantasy point predictions. What is a function? Well, a function is essentially a predefined formula which is used in the cell of a worksheet, and it returns a specific value given certain input parameters. Probably best to illustrate this with a few examples. So returning to the workbook, let's just go to the estimator. We'll use this as our sandbox. A simple function is the square root of a number. So equals sqrt, which is the square root, has one parameter, and that is the number. Let's 4. So the square root of 4 should be 2. Similarly, I can go here and put in the power of a number, and if we notice here, this has two arguments. The first argument is the number, the second argument is the power. So I'm going to raise 4 to the power of 2, which is the same as saying 4 squared, which comes to 16. Other simple functions are, let's say, summing up 3 numbers. The sum of those 3 numbers is 6. I could also change that to the average of those 3 numbers, or I could even just count those numbers. So there are 3 numbers. So this is very basic functions, and those are called basically they're Excel inbuilt functions. What we have though to help us predict our players' performance is some user-defined functions defined by ExcelDFS.com and included in the workbook, and there's a list of them here, and we're going to go through those and show you how we can use them both as single functions and in conjunction with others to make rather complex predictions. Okay, the first rule of using the functions is to download the data from the API. So at the moment the blank sheet has no function data in, so we go out to the Cloud API and we pull down. There we go, so we've got the latest data. Now the other thing is we don't seem to have any players here, so that's because we have no player data. So let's just go in here, let's import the FanDuel data, and then we'll go back to the estimator. So alright, now once again from the previous video, anything in here is our prediction, so we can do all our calculation here, and whatever we calculate here, the result must end up over here. Stop for a minute. Let me just deviate for a second and explain one more function that is not commonly used in Excel, but is certainly of great value, and that is the if function. What this basically does is it examines a logical test, which is the first parameter, and parameters are separated by commas. If the value is true, it does whatever is here, and if the value is false, it does whatever is here. So just to look at that once again by way of an example, let's look at this data set here, candidates who sat an exam, their result. Let's see who's passed and who's failed. Let's say the pass rate is 50%, so we'll do equals if if that cell is greater or equal to 50, so that's the test, then the response will be pass. Else, so if it's less than 50, it will be fail. So let's just take a look at that. Copy that down, and we see immediately that all the fails here are below 50. 50 is a pass, 45 is a fail. So basically what we've done there is we've said if that value is over or equal to 50, put in the cell the result of the if function is pass. Otherwise it's fail. Now of course you can't process numerically the words pass or fail, so let's just do another one here. Equals if that, whoops, what happened there, sorry, equals if that cell is equal to or greater than 50, then the pass is a 1, else the fail is a 0. So yes, I'll accept that correction. Okay, so let's copy that down. And so a pass basically corresponds to a 1 and a fail to a 0. So all of a sudden we can now process it numerically. That's a good example of an if statement, and an if statement is very important because it allows us to make conditional statements in our function structures in the future. Now let's go straight into the first function, which we did discuss in the previous video, but let's start there because this is a very valuable one. NBA moving average fantasy points. So to get a moving average, we need the two arguments, the player's name and the number of games. So a moving average is simply, if it's a moving average of 5 games, it's the average score for that player of fantasy points in the last 5 games. Incidentally, this statement is simply equivalent to moving average player's name for 1 game, or essentially the last score that was recorded for him. Okay, so let's do something really simple here. Let's just go equals NBA moving average on, by the way, if you forget what the arguments are, just hit that and then you can use this box. Let's put the player's name in there, and the number of games we'll say is let's just say 30. So we're basically doing something that is synonymous with just taking the data from the data file, a long-term moving average. Now, as we previously discussed, this column is the one that actually takes our prediction, so I'll bring that over to there. Now let's just fill and recalculate all that. Okay, goes red, we wait and touch nothing. Turns green, it's done. So now I'll just transfer that to the solver if I like it. And note how we've gone down with the same formula, and although for Aaron Brooks it was 4.5, you know, Al Horford is 33.7. So we're basically applying the same formula that's in this line here, to every player. Okay, I'm just going to clean this up now. Well, it doesn't really. Yeah, okay. I'll just clean it out, and we'll start again. Okay, so I'm going to do something a little bit more structured with this. I'm going to start with base score, and I'm going to say here number of games. Now I am going to change the color of this because this always helps me think. So my base score for each player is going to be equals NBA moving average, this player, and then it's going to be whatever's in there. So if I put, for example, 5 games in here, then let's just try, I switch it again, I get a different value. So you know what I'm also going to do, let's start to juice this up with a bit more structure. So my base score for this particular example is going to remain as this. So I would transfer that, oh sorry, wrong way, I would say that goes into the base score, and the base score can be varied by whatever I put in that column. So right, now as we previously discussed before, baseball can be a streaky game. You're either on a good streak or a bad streak. So I'm going to make a streak correction. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to say, and I'm going to do this by, we can use less rows, but I'm going to make it hopefully more easy to understand for those who, oh, terrible color, who've never used this before. So the streak correction is going to equal moving, oh, I'm sorry, NBA moving average for this player for 3 games, and then let me put in equals NBA moving average this player for 30 games. So what I'm basically saying here is if the guy has done better in the short term than he has done over the 30 days, so once again, moving average, let's put that in, equals 3, moving average equals 30. So if that number is bigger than that number, we can conclude he's on a streak. So equals that minus that number. So if that's positive, then the guy's on a streak. If it's negative, he's not on a streak. So I might say that my new fantasy point is my base rate plus my streak correction. So I want to basically favor the player who's feeling lucky, he's up, he's got a higher score in the last very few games than he has over the last 30. Now let me just test this. I'm going to flick this to the 20, see if I like the way the numbers come out. So I'm going to fill and recalculate that. So let's look. There's okay. Something's too big there. Let's just look at this. So our base score for this guy is 16. Our streak correction is 22, which is giving him 39. Okay, the streak correction's too much, so I'm going to take this and I'm going to say times 0.1 of the difference rather. Let's just try that. What does that do? Okay, so I've basically done something with a streak correction. So I've taken my base score, I've applied a streak correction. Take this guy for example. His streak correction is negative because his moving average of 3 days is 2.2 and his moving average is 3. Let's try a more well-known player and see what we get. I'm not playing today maybe. Okay. Right, there's a big number there. Okay, take Andre Drummond. So over 30 games, he scored an average of 43. So the last 3 games he scored 54, and he scored 43 over the longer period, so he gets a streak correction of 1.08. Okay, that's more plausible, I guess. So his base score, his base score is 43, and we add the streak score, and that makes it 44. So that would be a way of applying a streak correction. Another way of doing it might be as follows. This might be a little bit more predictable. You might say, I might put in another line here, and I might say equals if the streak correction, did that again, sorry, equals if the streak correction is greater than 0, that means he's on a streak, then let's just give them carte blanche 5 points. 3 points, else -3. So what that means is we're just giving them a rudimentary amount, whether they're positive or negative. So now my final result will be equals the base score plus, which I now call the streak correction. He's on a winning streak. So now I might recalculate that for 20, and now I've got a finite amount. It's either 3 plus 3 or -3 to adjust. So the base score plus the streak correction is now what they're scoring. So that's one way of using it. Another way, as we discussed in a previous video, we could just do something like moving average equals 3 and moving average equals 30. So we put that in, equals NBA moving average for that player for 3, and then equals NBA moving average that player for 30. And then we simply take that plus that divided by 2, and if we like that, we just fill and recalculate, and what that means is we take a high scorer here. So somebody here who's done 34.5 in the last 3 games against 48 over 30 games is not really on a streak. So instead of taking the 48, we've taken 41.6. The other way we could play with this is we could go equals NBA last score for that guy. There's only one argument for last score, and so now we've got equal amounts. If we like that, fill down and recalculate it. If we just look at the numbers and they sort of add up to us, we can then switch that over to all, fill and recalculate. This is where it does take some time. Okay, that's done. So now we've got an average based on, it's quite a simple thing. It's the 3-game moving average against the 30-game moving average added together and divided by 2. So, I'm sure there's a lot of ways you can think of to come up with different stuff there. Once again, if I wanted to use that, I would just transfer to the solver. And also, don't forget, share your predictions, which we've already done, and in 24 to 48 hours, you'll get back an estimate of, or rather the evaluation of how accurate your predictions were against what actually happened. So that basically deals with moving averages. I do like to use them as the base of my calculation and then other things to correct on top of them. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, from here on in, what we will do is we'll use the function help. So let's go down. Okay, player fact. This is a good one. Got lots of little interesting factors that you can get into your calculations. I'm just going to start this one. I'm going to start building a little bit more here. So that's my base prediction of 50 games moving average. So it's basically whatever we got for the whole season. Now let's try and build a. Well, let's just play with player fact for a while. Equals NBA player fact. Now, the first one we put in is mostly always the name, and now player fact has string arguments, which are just words. Let's try the first one. So, team. So this guy's team, the code comes back. So Min is playing Mem. Mim is playing Mem. This player's position is point guard. Is he home or away? He's away. And another one that is sometimes of interest is the fixture. Now what this means is, well, 1.83. So that generally means a positive, anything above 1 is positive for this particular player. By that I mean this is an indicator of the returned value on fixture is the percentage of the player's team wins and the percentage of the opposition team wins. So if the player's team had won 100% of all its games and the opposition team had won 50%, then that would mean the number returned would be 2.0. So the fact we're at 1.8 means that past history dictates that this guy's team is going to win this game. And I don't want to just hop ahead too quickly here, but let's just quickly digress. So past history, what does Vegas odds say? Let's try. So equals NBA Vegas odds, just for giggles. That goes there. Then let's say, is it op score, opposition score? Opposition score is 99 versus the team score of 102. So what Vegas is saying, and bear in mind this match has not been played yet, so the history says that Aaron Brooks' team is going to win, and the Vegas lines also say that his team will be outscoring the opposition. Okay, we digress. Okay, so now let's do a home or away correction. The last time I did a linear regression on this, I think it was worth somewhere, was it 5 or 7%? To make it easy, I'm going to say it's worth about 5%. So a simple correction would be equals NBA player fact for this guy, H or A. So whoops, sorry about that. What did I do? I missed out the comma delimiting the two parameters. Okay, so what is wrong with that? Tatty. Okay, so I could put, let's say if I just wanted to say, if you're home, your home team's cheering you. If you're away, it's to your detriment. You've got less support. That's probably more relevant in a British soccer match where they throw things at you if you're away. In this country where they're much more well behaved, let's say it's worth 5%. So let's say let's do equals if that equals home. If it equals home, then the correction is equal to the base prediction times 0.05, or, and that means away, it's equal to the base prediction times minus 0.05. So 5% up or 5% down, so he's away, so it's a negative. So I might just say that H or A correction, now maybe I'm just making them one colour, everything I add together. So the home away correction, and don't forget this column once again is where the final result goes. So that equals that plus that. Now, if I'm happy with that, well, let's just check it kind of runs okay. Alright, so someone's home here, the correction is positive 5% of that. How does that look for a big guy who scoring, he normally would score 43, but he's away, so we take minus 2.1. Okay, that seems to be working. So Once again, if I like that, I'd switch that to all, fill and recalculate. Okay, so we're done. So now transfer to solver, and that's our prediction. Now let's say I'm going to do the following. Let's just get rid of that. I'm going to do the following just for demonstration purposes. I can't see any reason why we do this, but let's just put every position in. So what is it? Point guard, center, SG, SF, and PF. Now, I'm just going to posit the notion, which I have no idea whether this is true because I've never run an analysis on it, that being home or away has an effect on whether a player, depending on his position. So how am I going to do this? Great idea. So what I'm going to say is, you know what I should put in here? Yeah, let's take that and paste it up there, and then we'll put here position. So I'm going to take all those. So you can do this really nicely if you're working on a project that's getting better as you adjust it day by day. So I can say equals NBA player fact, that player position. Okay, so position is 0 because there's no such thing. POS. Okay, so he's a point guard. And then what I could do is I could say equals if that equals PG, then the correction is, let's say, once again this is pure fantasy, the correction equals the base prediction multiplied by 0.04. Let's say we've got this from our analysis. Else, if it's not a point guard, it's 0. Okay, so that one I mean equals if that equals C, then the correction equals that times 0.03 this time, say. Or, whoops, I forgot the false argument. Else it's 0. So he's not a center, so that would be 0. Equals if that equals SG, then if it does equal SG, it's that times, let's make SG 0.05, give it a full, else it's 0, and equals if that, equals if that equals, if that equals SF, then let's say SF is equal base prediction times 0.025. Or if it's not an SF, it equals 0. So equals if the position is equal to PF, then the correction is equal to base prediction times I don't know, 0.02 else 0. So in theory, all these, only one of those should be completed. Now I'm going to say I got position, home or away, so I'm going to say absolute correction. Now that's because it has no sign at all, equals sum of all those. So that's my absolute correction. Maybe I should keep that lot in brown. So basically all I've done is I've added up all those cells, and if more than one of those cells is greater than 0, something is wrong. And then I'm going to put, I can start squeezing all this up, can't I? Okay, so then I might say after that, let's colour this one yellow because it's one of the derivatives of our correction. So that means equals if that, oh, I've done it again, haven't I? I've left if open parenthesis home or away equals home, because home is the positive one, then the correction equals that. Else it equals that times minus 1. Change the sign. So he's away, that's negative. So what I've basically said here is that for every different position, I've allowed 4% for a point guard, 3% for a centre, 5% for a SG, etc. So although I have no basis in fact to think this is correct, this shows how you can bring together player fact position, player fact home or away, to put a sign on your home or away correction and also give it some positional knowledge as well. So that doesn't look good. So my final prediction is now going to be that plus that. So my final prediction is there. If I like it, well, let's just try 20 to see there's no embarrassing hiccups. Okay, so I'm looking at, that's interesting. Don't like that. That's SG. So why didn't it fire off here? Let's look. If E4 equals, if E6 equals SG, then it's C4 times, oh, stupid, that's a 0 there, so Adrian has a 0 thing. Alright, so that's good. Zeros, okay, there's a 1. Alright, that looks good. So if I like it, I'm just going to switch that to all and fire it off. Just relax for a while, take a drink. Okay, so now I have a prediction in this column which comes from a long-term base moving average. It takes into consideration whether the team is home or away, and it applies a correction, positive for home, negative for away, which also takes into account supposedly coefficients that I found from, it would be a linear regression or something like that. So getting a little bit more complex there. And then what I would do, of course, is after transferring to the solver, I would always like to share my predictions, except I already have done. Okay, right, let's move on to something else. Now, one thing we could do quite simply is we could correct for the perceived strength of the fixture based on historical data. So that's the fixture, and we could probably that returns this, so we could probably do something to the effect of, if it's a win, add so much, if it's a loss, add so many percentage of the points. But another way of doing that, this is based on historical data, of course, is, and I'll leave that to you because all I'm trying to do here is show you what flexibility you have, and almost unlimited permutations and combinations. So I think that one's quite self-explanatory and you can do stuff with. The one that I like is Vegas odds, because when people start to bet with each other and they start building the odds through the morning before the event, there is quite a bit of innate intelligence in that, because people don't like to separate themselves from their money. So if you are in any way familiar with sport betting, you'll understand what terms like a money line are, and I won't go into that now because you probably like to read around it. But one thing I like to give a feel for how active the game will be is just taking team score and putting it over team score average. So let's just try doing that, and there are so many more that you can do in here, like op score over team score average, but let's try just using team score over team score average. So what I'll do is, let's go back and let us put in here, let's call this Vegas team score, and let's call that Vegas op score. So in we go, equals NBA Vegas odds for this guy, and this will be team score and this one will be NBA Vegas odds for this guy and opposition score. So similar to the historical prediction in the player fact, Vegas is telling us that this team is going to win. His team is going to win. So what we could do here is we could do a very simple correction, and let's call this the Vegas correction, and we could say that the correction is equal to, actually, you know what I'm going to, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to say, let's just get rid of that. I'm going to use the average. Let's have a look at function help. What's the Vegas odds team score average? So what I'm going to say is, of all the teams scoring today, average score team score average. So, oh, that's interesting. So this tends to suggest that today Vegas doesn't think this will be such an active game, because the average score of all the teams is predicted by Vegas to be 106. So whilst they are predicted to win, both historically and by Vegas, not going to be an active game. So we could say, since the points to be scored, and these are actual points, net points, not fantasy points, then this game is not going to be as active as others. So a coefficient of accuracy will be what the team's going to score divided by, so it's going to be 96% as active and points scored as your average game. So I might just put 96% times the base prediction for the player, or maybe I'll just base prediction of the player divided by, no, I don't even want to do it that way. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to say that the total correction for an active game is, yeah, you know what I'm going to say? I'm going to say exactly that. This is without thinking. I wouldn't recommend you copy this. Divided by 10. What's that give me? So I'm basically taking a coefficient of activity, if you like, which is less than unity, because this game's only predicted to score 102, where the average score is 106. I'm multiplying that by my base prediction to give it some scale to the particular player, and then I'm dividing it by 10. So that came completely out of my head. I wouldn't do that without any basis in fact, but you know what? It illustrates what we can do here. So now I'm going to say equals that base value plus the correction plus the Vegas correction, and by correction I mean this is home or away correction. Oops. So we now have three components. We're allowing a base, and then we're adding a correction for home or away, and we're also adding a correction for what Vegas believes the action will be. Okay, so now let's see if we like that, see what it does. Okay, I don't think there's any nasty belches or burps there. Yeah, okay, that seems plausible. I always like to look down at the big guys. Okay, this guy's scoring 48 normally, but he's home, so he gets a correction there. And also, why don't we do this? Now, of course, the great thing about this is you just either discard the sheet, or you can build on this another day. Okay, so alright, let's look down here. So high scoring there, so his base is 48, 30 day, he's playing home, so he gets a correction, but he's a power forward, so that's his correction based on that column. And he gets a good correction because this team appears to be winning in relation to the average, which is 106.5. Okay, so if that looks good, we just go back to all and now we retire and wait, and we have a reasonably complex prediction based on base moving averages, position on the field in relation to whether you're home or away, and we're taking into consideration what Vegas thinks. Now, I wouldn't advocate for one moment you use this, but as I say, we're just illustrating how the system operates. So I now transfer that to my solver, and I carry on as we did in video 2, filtering and optimizing. And incidentally, if you're one of those who likes to use the same sheet again, you just go back and you clear the data, and if you look back here, okay, this is not so good because we've got divide by zeros, but we still have all the formulas in, so that what you can do is, if you like this, you can build on it the next day. You just go up here and take out the fill, and then maybe you'll have a better idea, or you want to change how much each one of these is worth, or you can evolve and you can check the leaderboard over time and see how you're actually how your stats are doing and whether they're improving. Alright, so that's basically how to use the functions. I haven't covered all of them. I certainly can't cover all the permutations and combinations of using them, but hopefully if people become interested in this and they start to get their own homebrew versions going, then the result will be the leaderboard will climb in relation to our datum points like rotor grinders and the moving average, and your name will be up there with Clever Trevor, and our Excel DFS number will creep up so that there is sufficient distance between the other DFS players and what we as a crowd can actually produce. That's the hope. And so good luck, and please please have fun if nothing else. Thank you.